Briahna, what's on your radar?
Well, Robbie, as you're all well aware, when Elon Musk announced his intention to buy Twitter earlier this year, one of the principal reasons he cited for doing so were concerns that the platform was biased. Twitter has become an important tool for journalists and politicians, but it seems like content decisions are not being neutrally adjudicated. Rather, in Musk's view, Twitter leadership was advancing a certain partisan agenda. Now, basically, I agree. Twitter moderation is deeply inconsistent, but is Elon Musk actually doing anything about it? Let's take a look at some recent moderation choices made by Musk. Free speech is the bedrock of a functioning democracy, explained Musk, and Twitter is a digital town square where matters vital to the future of humanity are debated. His plan was to change Twitter's policy and ban only speech that goes far beyond what the law allows. To that end, after purchasing the app, he reinstated a number of previously banned accounts, including former President Donald Trump, who had been banned after his tweets on January 6th were judged as having incited the attack on the Capitol, and Kanye West, now known as Ye, who had been suspended just this past October for tweeting his plan to go DEFCON 3 against Jewish people. Others, of course, were not so lucky. Alex Jones, who had been suspended in 2018 for violating Twitter's abusive behavior policy, was not readmitted to the app because, according to Musk, lying about the deaths of the children slain at Sandy Hook was a bridge too far. Specifically, Musk evoked the tragic death of his own child, explaining that his personal experience with such a tragedy precluded him from showing Jones the same grace he showed West. However, Ye's amnesty was, of course, short-lived. Although Musk let Ye back on the platform after he talked to Ye about his DEFCON tweet and said, quote, "I think he took it to heart." 6 days ago, Ye posted an image of a swastika intertwined with a Star of David, which Musk says violated the company's policy against incitement to violence. Thus, Ye is banned again, and many of Musk's supporters are asking, should he have been? Libertarian comic Dave Smith put it this way: Kanye said a bunch of effed up and stupid things. He still shouldn't have his Twitter account banned. This is either a free speech platform or it's not. Elon Musk claiming it incited violence is absurd. At least be honest, you don't like his views, so you banned him. Podcaster Jason Whitlock argued that Kanye's suspension was an act of compassion, not suppression of speech, saying that Kanye needs to unplug and Musk did it for him. But that argument, quite transparently, doesn't gel with Musk's stated speech principles or the terms and conditions of the site. I read the policy, and free speech, as long as you aren't cringe, simply isn't in there. Part of the problem is that so much of the conversation around speech issues at Twitter are abstract, relying on presumptions that people who say they're free speech absolutists are actually more tolerant of all types of speech, regardless of whether that speech is personally offensive. But in evoking personal tragedy and banning Alex Jones, Musk admitted that a more subjective standard is in fact at play. Musk said he was bringing comedy back to Twitter, but quickly blocked and suspended people that made Elon Musk parody accounts. Is Musk fairly adjudicating claims, or is he simply making the site in his image? Now, as many have pointed out, First Amendment law has repeatedly struck down laws that would restrict offensive speech, including swastikas, as it famously did in Skokie v. National Socialist Party of America. If Musk were really allowing all speech except for that speech that goes well beyond what's legal, as he initially said, wouldn't Kanye's post be allowed? Now, of course, social media platforms like Twitter are certainly allowed to constrain the language permitted on the site, as Musk is now realizing the advertisers that are the source of most of the profit on the site require a certain level of decorum. They don't want their ads for squatty potties and Disney movies to run alongside hate symbols and invectives against religious minorities. But it is interesting that despite claims of being a free speech absolutist, Musk's standards are much more illiberal than those allowed on a sidewalk in Skokie, Illinois. In fact, some have pointed out that even based on the narrower rules promulgated by Twitter, designed to make the app friendly for casual users and advertisers alike, Musk is still being overly strict. Twitter's rules do prohibit threatening violence against an individual or a group of people. The rules also prohibit the glorification of violence. You may not engage in targeted harassment of someone or incite other people to do so. You may not promote violence against, threaten, or harass other people on the basis of race, ethnicity, national origin, caste, sexual orientation, gender identity, religious affiliation, age, disability, or serious disease. You are also prohibited from using Twitter services to artificially amplify or suppress information or deceptively share synthetic or manipulated media likely to cause harm. Okay, so let's test whether under Musk these standards are being enforced. For one, it's not clear that, as personally repugnant as I find Kanye's hybrid swastika Star of David symbol, that it violates Twitter's rules. Whether naively or as a troll, Kanye posted the symbol describing it as a representation of unity rather than hate. It's hard to argue that it made sense to invite Kanye back to Twitter after saying he intended to go DEFCON 3 for Jewish people. That was okay. But eject him after posting the swastika Star of David image with the text, "Yay 24, love everyone, hashtag love speech." Are we to believe that the first tweet was not really an incitement to violence and thus it made sense to let him back on the app, but the second love everyone tweet was? Again, I'm not the one who set high goals for free speech absolutism here on Twitter. Musk is. Is this what a consistent, rational approach to doing this looks like? Is there really a rule prohibiting hate symbols, or is Musk reacting to the embarrassment of having recently readmitted Kanye West immediately, and only to have him immediately post swastikas, leak private texts with Musk, and post, less than flattering pictures of Musk at the beach? Moreover, a quick search of the site reveals that there's not an enforced prohibition against posting swastikas or any other hate symbol. You can find them all over the place in various contexts, including informational or educational ones. There's certainly been no culling of Confederate flags, burning crosses, or other symbols of racial terrorism. And as many people on the left have pointed out, targeted harassment seems to be perfectly acceptable as long as the person being harassed doesn't have an in with the establishment figures who get a special hearing at Twitter HQ. As revealed in the Twitter files, establishment figures on both sides of the aisle had the privilege of requesting favors that the rest of us have to do without. That's a real problem. Elites shouldn't get special treatment on the app. But that seems like a top-down problem, not necessarily a left-right one. Ultimately, people across the political spectrum feel wronged on the Bird app. We obviously have talked about the Hunter Biden laptop suppression, and I believe that was a hugely dumb move by Twitter and an explicitly political one. But also, Boston Children's Hospital has received multiple bomb threats after the now infamous Libs of TikTok account posted content titled, "Boston Children's Hospital supports castrating kids and I have evidence." Regardless of whether or not you think they should have the right to post said content, isn't there at least as credible an argument that the subsequent bomb threats amount to an incitement to violence as Kanye's tweets? Does it make sense for Kanye's post to come down while Libs of TikTok was reinstated? I don't know. After my disagreement with nuclear nonproliferation advocate Joe Cirincione about a month ago over that CPC letter advocating peace in Ukraine, how dare it, I was targeted by NAFO, a group founded by a Holocaust denier that photoshopped images of my face on top of dead Ukrainians superimposed with words I've never said. Does that violate Twitter guidelines against deceptively sharing synthetic or manipulated media likely to cause harm? One person even paid for a bomb to be sent to Ukraine on which was written, "Briahna Joy Gray is a vile bitch." Does this violate Twitter guidelines? Now, I have no interest in signaling myself out here as a victim. Many people have felt, of course, that Twitter rules were unevenly enforced, and I'm a big girl. Whom amongst us hasn't had her name written on a bomb and sent to a war zone? The point is that there is a bigger problem here than the one identified by Musk before he bought this app, and it's not clear to me that he's really doing anything about it. Over and over again, elites seem to be making it clear. It's not hate speech that's the problem. It's hate speech that embarrasses me or loses me appetizers or offends the memory of my child. It's not election interference that's the problem. It's election interference that hurts my candidate. Musk proposed creating a content moderation council to help make these decisions, and I hope that he does. But will it be staffed by more insiders? Will it simply formalize the process that's happening now, whereby high-profile accounts like Andy knows, I talked about this in an earlier radar, can simply request that users be banned and get their wish? Or will Musk finally start to articulate consistent principles that lead to fairness and, yes, real freedom? Only time will tell, but I gotta say, we aren't off to an especially auspicious start here. Yeah, I saw some of the commentary on this Kanye stuff, and it's a difficult thing to talk about because I don't think anybody supports the substance or tone of what Kanye is up to, but it is hard to parse out why it is that these decisions are being made, and every single time a new one comes down the pike, the rubric that is getting used only becomes that much more obscure.
Right. I don't think anyone could credibly argue that Kanye posting the swastika is actually an incitement to violence, more so than the examples you've pointed out, incitement to violence being a very well-litigated term that would not apply to just showing a swastika picture, because you can do that on Twitter in other contexts. You could certainly do that in the public square and not be arrested for it because it's an ironclad First Amendment kind of thing. Yeah, look, the gap between what Elon has promised to do and what he's actually doing, I think exists, and it's fair to point it out. I do think it's rich not for you, but for other people who claim about who complain about the level of access an Andy No type person now has to the content moderators. Well, that's the level of access that your kind of mainstream or progressive media people had with the old Twitter regime, and I think it was weaponized against provocative people, contrarian people, time and time and time again. Now it's being weaponized against more now that tool is in the hands of the enemy from their standpoint, and they're really upset about it.
That is true, and there are some really big significant examples like the Hunter Biden instance that cannot be ignored. But it is also true that part of the revelation of the Twitter files is that the Trump campaign reached out to have things taken down in the same way that the Biden campaign did.
So does everybody.
So, I mean, it's not as though it was being weaponized by the left and now it's being weaponized by the right. It was weaponized by elites of both parties before, and I suspect there's still a lot of elite glad-handing going on right now. If you happen to have access to Elon Musk, if you happen to have his phone number or he follows you and you can DM him and get people to take stuff down, I still think that that's a privilege that's available to you that's not available to everyone else. And although I do think that he's planning to set up some of these moderation panels, people should be asking a lot of hard questions about who is going to be on those panels. Isn't it going to be the same kind of people that think we have to protect what Elon Musk's interests are? And some of those interests I think are perfectly legitimate. It's legitimate for him to have personal feelings about having gone through a tragedy with his child and not wanting Alex Jones back on. But you cannot pretend that that is anything other than your personal peccadillo's driving policy.
You know, he might actually take a page out of Facebook's book, something I would never say in any other context, but Facebook has this Supreme Court of Facebook, this content review board of First Amendment scholars, international free speech people, so some domestic First Amendment scholars, some international human rights people who get together and will review. Now they can only review a tiny portion of the cases that Facebook has adjudicated, but in most cases they have disagreed. They have countermanded a Facebook decision to take down a piece of content and said, no, this ought to be up on free speech grounds. Maybe doing something like that. Twitter used to have that Trust and Safety Council that really acted as a kind of progressive censorship wing, but a board staffed by actual people who have affinity and affection for real principles of free speech, even for allowing controversial content, might benefit and would certainly be a better solution than Elon Musk himself handling all of these issues. Look,
this stuff is hard. That's my only point. I don't mean, I'm not like judging Elon Musk in particular, although that he has set himself out to be judged by setting such high standards and being so critical of the job other people are doing. But it's legitimately hard. And part of the reason that we've had so many screw-ups in the past is political, but part of it is because folks are really struggling to figure this out. And I do worry sometimes that some of the energy is spent kind of like witch hunting, for people's agenda, as opposed to doing the hard work of digging into the constitutional cases and figuring it out. It's also really ugly. Yeah. So to the extent that we've been having this conversation about Balenciaga and the child porn case being on the background of the desk setup and what that means. There was a reason that so many First Amendment cases deal with things like child porn and swastikas and Nazis and all of the ugly stuff, because it's on the ugly margins that the case law that applies to the rest of us is made. So we're going to have to dig into the merits of something like Kanye's break down tweets if we're gonna want to have principles that extend to every scenario that comes up in a fair way.
Yeah. You can't always just leave it up and let people themselves choose if they want to see it too. That's always an option. Yeah. Nobody's required to look at Kanye's tweets. You can mute him, you can block him, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
We'll have more Rising right after this.